Many people wonder, how can I teach my kid to read? Well, I'm Nicholeen Peck, and actually I've taught many people to read. I'm a homeschool mom, but I'm also a parenting expert. And in this video, I'm going to give you the secrets to how to teach your kid to read quickly. When I first decided that I was going to homeschool my children, I was immediately worried about one big problem, and that was teaching them to read. Because if you can teach them to read, you can teach them anything. But if they don't learn to read, it makes everything else harder. Well, I learned along the way not to make such a big deal out of it, but I will say my children all read really early. In fact, at 3 years old, my oldest child was starting to read. And the reason why is because what I'm going to teach you today. At the first homeschooling conference I went to, there was a woman there, and she was doing a class called I Can Teach a Child to Read in 40 Minutes, and So Can You. I thought, 40 minutes? There's no way. Well, this lady named Lynn Hansen brought a non-reading child up from the audience and actually taught him in front of the whole audience how to read in 40 minutes. I was sold. I attended her next class where she explained exactly what she did. Now, I'm not her, and the Lynn Hansen reading method is awesome, and I highly recommend that you look at it. But what I want to tell you today are some of the little things that you can start doing at your home to teach your child to read that made an enormous difference for my children. So the very first step of learning to read is learning the letters of the alphabet, and we all sing that song, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and everybody knows that song. So that's number one. Of course, you've probably already been working on that with your child, but if not, please start there. It's hard to go straight into reading without having letter recognition down. So after we learn the letters, then we learn the sounds. The sounds is where it gets difficult. So usually the children can learn the letters pretty quickly. You show them an A, you show them an apple, and you say, A says A like apple, and A says its name like angry. So you can say words and show them what it is, and they can get that pretty good. But when it comes to deciphering a word, that's when the sounds get tricky. When we're putting all the sounds together, not only is it hard for the brain to make the mouth work in that way and for it to process with that type of combination when it's never done that before, but your brain does not know how to decide which sound those vowels are going to make in each word. It's really the vowels that are tricky. In fact, I think we spend way too much time on consonants and not enough time on vowels. Once I teach my children the A, B, C, D, E, F, G song, then we go to learning what the letters say when you touch them. So if I touch this letter D, it says D, and F says F, and G says J, and G. So we know that if we touch them, they make a sound. So for me and my children, we make the learning very tactile at first. This helps the brain put the pieces together because they're using their hand to work through the words. So don't feel like that pointing out and touching the letters is a bad thing. It's an absolutely necessary step for hooking the different places in the brain together to decipher the language and the sounds. So after they can very easily point to a letter and tell me what it says, or if I tell them a letter and I say, what does this letter say? And they can do it immediately, then I know they're ready for step 2. Before I get to step 2, I want to share with you a fun game that I invented after attending Lynn Hansen's class. So I decided that every time I was in the car with my young son, I was going to play a game. And I invented this game called the hard letter game. Now that's a little bit of reverse psychology there, because I wanted the children to go, oh, I can do that. That's easy. It's not hard. I can do hard things. So I would say, all right, I'm thinking of a letter, and this letter is so hard, you'll never be able to tell me what it says. And then I might pick the letter L, and then they'll say, oh, and they'll say, oh, you got it. Okay, now I'm going to think of another really hard letter. Now, when I got to the really hard letters, usually it was the vowels. So when I teach them what the vowels say, I would say that when they touch it, they say A says A and A. E says E and E. I says I and I. So I would teach them the letters that these vowel letters have multiple sounds. And like we saw with G, the consonants sometimes have multiple sounds too. So make sure that they know those sounds that can go with those letters. But keep it simple. It does not need to be too complex at first. So now what is step 2? After they can identify the letter and the sound it makes when you touch it, they are ready to learn to read. So one thing that Lynn taught was that you have a chart like this, and you have the children go through the chart singing the ABC song. So you pointed out, let's sing the ABC song. Ready? Oh, there's no A there. And then you'd say, that's okay, we'll write that down. That one's missing. So then you have another piece of paper where you write down the A. Well, let's just sing the rest of the song. B, C, D. There's no E there. So I guess we better write the E down. And you go through the entire alphabet writing down the letters that are missing. And then you teach the children that these are called consonants and these are called vowels. And vowels change what they say depending upon where they are in the word and depending upon how many syllables or claps there are in the word. So I teach my children to listen to words and tell me how many claps or syllables are in that word. And then we know how many vowel combinations we need to find. And it's super simple. In fact, most of the training that people do for reading nowadays is based on memorization. But this system that we used was based on songs and on actually diagramming words and knowing how the letters play with each other. In fact, Lynn had this chart system that I got that was amazing, where she showed certain letters were married and they behave differently if they're married. Of course, she showed blended letters, things like that, and it was incredible. I highly recommend looking into her system. But this is how she taught at first. Now, there were other things to help motivate the child along the process for the full 40 minutes, but I have now done it multiple different times, not just with my 4 children, but also with other people's children. It's amazing how many people come to me, even though I'm a homeschooler, and they might even be a public school teacher, and they'll say, you know what, I teach 5th grade, I'm not really good at teaching reading, and so can you help me teach my child how to read? Like, what did you do? Can you do reading lessons for my child? And I would say, well, actually, it's pretty simple. I'll teach you at the same time and then you can go home and finish. And it'll only take about an hour. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, it's true. Obviously it takes practice afterward, but let me show you step number 3. After you extract the vowels from the consonants, then you have a consonant list and you have a list of vowels. Now you can see I've listed the vowels 2 different times here on this chart. And we have the little short vowel sound, and this arrow means the long vowel sound. Now, Lynn instructed to teach words with the long vowel sound first. That's not something that people usually do. They usually teach short vowel sound words first because they seem like they're less intimidating. But here's the secret that Lynn said. If you teach them these first, these ones are so much easier that they will feel like there is no problem. If you teach them easy first and then get to these, they get overwhelmed. So why not start with the long vowel first? So that's what we did. So here's a word here. The word is name, okay? So she taught me a song. Well, she taught all the parents in attendance a song. And the song goes like this. A with a vowel after says A. E with a vowel after says E. I with a vowel after says I. O with a vowel after says O. U with a vowel after says U or oo. Perfect. There's the recipe. So she said if you look at this one word, which we know is only one clap, it's the word name, but the student doesn't know it's the word name yet, then we say, okay, find all of the consonants. Okay, well that's a consonant and that's a consonant, so then find the vowels. Well, here's a vowel and here's a vowel. Okay, well so what's the first vowel? Well, it's an A. Well, does it have a vowel after? Oh, yes, it does. So if it has a vowel after, then you put an arrow over it to remind you that it's got a vowel after. Now, there's a rule with vowels after, and that is that we don't say them. So this word would be name. We don't say the vowel after. This works for words like boat, coat, bake, cake. We don't say the vowel after. And O with the vowel after says O, so it's b-oat. That is how you teach a person to read those words. Now, once I teach the children to read the long vowel sounds, I will make a list of words like this with long vowel sounds. Not tricky words, but words that easily fit the formula. Now, just so you know, this works for every clap in most words. Now, of course, there's exceptions, but we're not teaching exceptions in this lesson. You'll have to talk to Lynn about how to do that. She has special ways, and truly, I'm just trying to help out because so many people ask me this. So, after they read word lists with the long vowel sound, then we teach them the short vowel sound. There's a song that goes with the vowels for the short vowel sound, and the song goes like this. A without, now the without means without a vowel after. A without says apple. E without says elephant. I without says igloo. O without says octopus. U without says umbrella. That's the song. So if I come across a word like this one here, I would say, where are my consonants? D. Where are my vowels? A. Is there a vowel after? No. It's without a vowel after. That's why there's this little pit here. It's a little hole. There's nothing after. You're stuck. So A without says apple. So the word is d. Dad. Because A without says apple. The same works for hit, sit, any of those one-syllable short vowel sound words. Except for some of them like G-O, that's go. Now that one breaks the rules. So she has a way that you handle rule breakers. I'm not going to get into that right now. But at first, what you do is you make word lists with all the words that fit these two rules. At that point, you can declare to your child they know how to read because they are reading words at that particular time. And then you tell them every single day they're going to practice with you. Now, this is one thing I didn't mention before. Before I teach my children to read, I tell them that if I do that they will have to practice with me for 15 minutes every day until they really get it down. And I make them promise that they will practice for 15 minutes a day. Otherwise, I won't teach them to read. And they really want to read. Sometimes when they're 3 and 4 years old, they want to know how to read. And so they promise, yes, Mom, I will practice for 15 minutes a day. So after I've made word lists, I sit down with my children and I practice with them daily for 15 minutes. Then what I did is I made some books of my very own that only had words that had these rules that could apply to them. And maybe a couple of those naughty words that break the rules that I taught them about because of the way Lynn taught me to do that. But then there are other books that we graduated into. So some of the classic books like Bob books, most of the words in a Bob book follow this formula or this formula. There are very few that don't. And so you can read through all of the series of Bob books and you can get great practice. Now, occasionally you'll come across a word like go or no, and then you'll have to put that in the memorization category. But there's very few words that have to be memorized. And that's the beauty of the way that we did teaching to read in my family. I absolutely love it. We're also very musical, so learning those little songs was the best way to teach the children to read. In fact, songs connect multiple parts of the brain, which is really genius about this particular system. So when I taught my children to read, I knew that I had done something well when they would sit on their own and try to decipher things, and I would hear these little songs happening. The hard part comes when you're into it a little ways and people don't want to practice anymore. So remember, the child made the commitment. Now in our family, we learn skills of self-government because we teach the children and ourselves as adults how to govern ourselves. We learn 4 basic skills. Those 4 basic skills are following instructions, accepting no answers, accepting consequences, and disagreeing appropriately. So when it becomes difficult and they don't want to do the reading practice, then I simply tell them, I'm giving you an instruction to do 15 minutes of reading. They know how to follow an instruction. They also know how to disagree appropriately. If they really don't want to do it, we can talk about it a little further, but usually they just go, okay, and we practice. Here's the thing with reading. If you don't practice on a regular basis, it comes way too slow. They get frustrated and then they don't want to do it anymore. That's why when you teach a child to read, you have to get that commitment up front that they will practice, and then you have to help them follow through and keep that commitment. It really is a process of self-government to learn how to read and to go through that process. I hope some of the things that I shared today helped you. I'm pretty sure if you like this video, you're really going to love my next video, which is how to teach problem-solving skills to children. So click on the link and I'll see you there.